In this video, you and I get to answer the question, what is posture in the context of Identity Services Engine? Let's begin. I'd like you to imagine that you and I are going to the airport, and on our way to the gate, we have to go through something like this. And it's a security checkpoint. They're going to look at us and analyze us and make sure we're all good before they let us into the gate area. Well, you and I can do that same type of analysis on our networks by using posture assessment services that are available with ICE. And you might be thinking, well, Keith, what would we check on a computer before we let it into our network? Well, here's some things we might want to check for. We might be looking for a certain version of a Windows update. Is it present or not on that computer? Does the computer have the corporate approved current version of the antivirus or anti-spyware software running on that computer? Does the computer have a specific registry setting that we're looking for? Maybe we plant some deep and dark registry setting on every corporate asset, and we're simply looking for that to verify that it's a corporate asset before allowing it on the network. Or maybe we're looking for some type of application or service that's currently running on the system. And if that software or service or application is not running on the system, we don't let that computer in. And we can check not only Windows computers, but we also can check other devices as well. For example, Mac OS. The next question is, how in the world do we check all of those things before we let that computer onto the network? And the way we're going to do it is with some type of NAC agent. Now, NAC is an acronym that stands for Network Access Control. So we're going to have some software running on this computer, and it could be a persistent piece of software that's running all the time, which is literally called the NAC agent. Or we could have some temporary application that just runs for a few minutes on that computer that's checking all those items for compliance and reporting it back to ICE whether or not that device is compliant or not with our policy. So regarding persistent software that we'd run on this computer, whether it's a Mac or Windows, that would be appropriate for a machine that is corporate owned, that we're responsible for, we have admin rights on it, we install the software, and it stays running all the time. Now, if we have guests who are bringing their own devices into our network, and we still wanted to get some information from those devices regarding basic elements that need to be in place, it's very likely we're not going to install a full client on the guest computers, but instead do some type of a lightweight Java or ActiveX derivative that's looking for basic elements that need to be present on that computer before we're going to allow it onto our network. So in the big picture, we have these devices that are trying to get access to the network. They may have an 802.1x supplicant, or we might be using Mac authentication bypass, or we might be using web authentication. Here at this switch, and this also applies to wireless as well, we have our authenticators. And the authenticators have a relationship with the ICE server, which is acting as our AAA authentication server. Now, on the ICE server, we can create users and endpoints locally on that ICE server. We also have the ability to reach out to external identity stores for the benefit of authenticating a user and verifying that the credentials are right for that user. We've also seen on this ICE server that we have policies regarding authentication and authorization. So regarding the authentication rules, we have the defaults with MAB and 802.1x, and we modified the MAB rule just a little bit so that if there was an unknown user, it could continue and we could go ahead and do the web authentication. Regarding authorization profiles, we created a couple of those. We created one that says if this computer is a member of the domain, and if the user is a member of the domain, and if the results of 802.1x with FAST were successful for both user and computer, we'll go ahead and download an access control list and give that port authorization so the user can come in on that port. That was one of our custom authorization profiles. We created another one as well that said if this user is a member of domain users and has come in through web authentication using the guest flow, let's download a specific access control list and give them access into the network through that authorized port. And it was also in the authorization profiles at the very bottom, the very last default rule with nothing else matched, where we said you need to go ahead and use the authorization profile of WebAuth, which redirected the user for web authentication to the ICE server. Now, the piece that we're going to add to the authorization profiles is a check regarding posture. Is the client who's coming in, are they compliant with the posture that we're requiring? For example, if we're looking for a specific version of antivirus software, or if we're looking for a specific minimum patch level for Windows, are they compliant? Or the other option is, are they non-compliant? And there's actually a third option regarding posture, and that could be unknown. So a computer that's just connecting to the network, which does not have any type of network admissions control software, either a temporary NAC agent or a permanent one, if it's not installed, the ICE server is not going to know exactly the posture of that device, and that would be considered as a posture status of unknown. So here's what you and I could do. We could create 3 new authorization profiles. We could create an authorization profile that says, 1, is your posture unknown? And if the posture is unknown, we could go ahead and redirect them to ICE. And this redirection wouldn't be for the benefit of authentication. This redirection would be the benefit of connecting over to the ICE server and downloading the agent, the network admissions control agent, so that that agent running on the computer could go to work and start looking at the details to determine whether this host, the PC, is compliant or not with our policy. The second authorization profile we could create would be for non-compliant. And that would be the case where we have an agent, either temporary or a permanent agent running on that computer. It's looking to see if we have the current update for our antivirus. And if we aren't compliant, it could go ahead and put us into a quarantine VLAN, also sometimes called a remediation VLAN. And that would be based on that authorization policy that says, okay, we're going to go ahead and put you into VLAN 20 or VLAN 30 or VLAN 40. And inside of VLAN 40, there's going to be a DHCP server handing out IP addresses. And using that remediation or that quarantine VLAN, the host should have access to the additional resource to get themselves up to speed. So, for example, if you and I are requiring a certain level of antivirus to be installed on the host, when that host is put into this remediation VLAN, we should also have the updates that they need in that VLAN so that the user can go ahead and act on those updates. Because the intention is we want the host to get up to speed, make sure they're current, make sure they're compliant, then re-authenticate again, and that can bring us to our third authorization profile. If they are compliant, then we can go ahead and put them in the VLAN that they're supposed to be in. We can download the access control list that gives them the rights they need, and that user is off to the races. So with each one of these, we have the ability to download a specific access control list, to put them in a specific VLAN, or in the case where they do not have an agent running, we can redirect them over to a resource where they can get that client. So the process from going from 0 to hero, it may be a few login attempts for that user. Once to get the agent, second to go ahead and identify that it's not compliant and do the updates, and then third to finally authenticate with a compliant host and finally get access to the network. In this video, we've taken a look at the concept of how posture can operate in an ICE environment. I'm glad you joined me for this video. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.